I believe that Trump and his people are not happy with Putin, who is not willing to compromise.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, has told world leaders that international law doesn't work and only weapons guarantee peace. He made the comments in an address at the UN General Assembly.
Today, no one but ourselves can guarantee security. Only strong alliances, only strong partners, and only our own weapons. The 21st century isn't much different from the past. If a nation wants peace, it still has to work on weapons. It's sick, but that's the reality. Not international law, not cooperation. Weapons decide who survives. Excellencies, you know perfectly well international law doesn't work fully unless you have powerful friends who are truly willing to stand up for it. And even that doesn't work without weapons. It's terrible, but without it, things would be even worse. There are no security guarantees except friends and weapons. No Ukrainian choice this kind of reality.
Well, he couldn't have been any plainer, could he? That was President Zelenskyy. Ukraine did get some unexpected backing, really, from Donald Trump last night. The US president said Ukraine could not only regain territory lost to Russia, but could even go further. Let's talk to a former Ukrainian diplomat, Alexander Khara. Alexander Khara, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Were you surprised by what Donald Trump posted yesterday?
Well, I was partially surprised. Certainly, we cannot but welcome such a statement and reassessment of the ability of Ukraine to recover the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. However, the talk is cheap, and if there is nothing behind such a support for Ukraine, and I mean the harsh sanctions against Russia and their enablers, plus stepping up support for Ukraine in terms of the military, the defensive systems, and so on. It's not going to materialize anytime soon. Certainly,
Yes.
we are happy that Europeans are stepping in and they committed to Ukraine's defense now in the future. But fighting such an enemy as Russia, we need more and now.
But we do know that Donald Trump has a history of tending to agree with the last person he spoke to, and he had presumably quite a constructive meeting with President Zelenskyy yesterday. He then came up with that post, but it doesn't mean that he'll stick to the sentiment he expressed yesterday, does it?
Well, I think so. But from the other hand, I believe that Trump and his people are not happy with Putin, who is not willing to compromise, even though Trump proposed him exceptional, let's say, deal that Russia can keep Crimea legally and the rest of temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine de facto. And certainly from the beginning of his term of office, Mr. Trump ruled out any possibility of Ukraine to join NATO. Those conditions are not acceptable for Ukrainian government and Ukrainian people, but they might be acceptable for Putin, who faces troubles on the battlefield. And actually, just like next year, there will be, let's say, an anniversary of this war. The Soviet Union fought 4 years in the Great Patriotic War, as the Russians called this period of time during the Second World War. And the Russians were able to capture only 20% of Ukrainian territory, while it's Ukraine that is fighting against Russia, even though we are supported by more than 50 nations, but none of those nations sent their troops to Ukraine, while Russia is backed by China, DPRC, Iran, and some other countries.
So do you believe that your only hope, Ukraine's only hope of winning the war, not just trudging along with it, but actually winning it, would be if troops from countries like Britain, like France, were actually there on the ground fighting alongside the forces of Ukraine?
Well, not at all. We would love to see our partners in this so-called coalition willing to cover our skies and to shut down incoming missiles and drones. that would greatly help Ukraine, and we can redeploy our air defense and other assets closer to the front line. But we can beat Russians on different way. Certainly, they have a manpower advantage. They outnumber us in the east. But we showed that we found a weak point. The Achilles heel of Russia is the vastness of their territory, and they are not able to defend their oil and refineries and other systems, energy systems. And certainly, we still are able to isolate Crimea, which would not just help our fighters on the south, because Russia used Crimea as a bridgehead to supply weapons and manpower to fight against us. But it's going to be a huge political dilemma for Mr. Putin, because now Crimea is a sacred place for Russians, and they believe it always belonged to them, even though it's not related to truth and history at all. So we have other ways how to end this war on our terms, and it's the only way how we can beat the much bigger enemy as we are. It's by undermining its ability to generate resources and convert them into the capabilities to fight against us.
So you mentioned sanctions from the US. Would it help, and how quickly would it help, if the US did impose really strong, strict sanctions against Russia?
They would help only if our Western partners, and Americans particularly, would consider sanctions as a tool of war. And the main goal is not to alter the behavior of Mr. Putin and put him in the position to negotiate something with Ukraine, but to crush his economy and make it impossible for him to carry on this war. So that's why we would love to see those sanctions against Russia and those countries who support it. First and foremost, China, but other countries as well, like Turkey. Turkey is buying more and more Russian gas and supplying it to Europe. 3 European countries like Spain, France, and Belgium are buying huge amount of LNG from Russia, and some other countries like Hungary and Slovakia are buying Russian energy and building the energy and the infrastructure with the help of Russia. So if they absorb that, and actually I would add the other thing, I believe that the Poles decided to reopen its border with Belarus, which is a puppet state controlled by the Kremlin, which would allow not just Chinese goods to flow into Europe, but for the Russians to get those dual use and other goods that they need to fight this war. So I would love to see Poland being more, let's say, strict on this and keep the border closed, which would greatly affect not just Belarus, not just China, but Russia itself.
Thank you very much for your time, former Ukrainian diplomat Alexander Khara.